Namaste and greetings. I, Riya Rawat, researcher at IMPRI, Impact and Policy Research Institute, Prabhav एवं नीति अनुसंधान संस्थान, Nai Delhi, extend my warmest welcome to you all to IMPRI Web Policy Learning. Today, we are gathered here for day 9 of Environment Policy and Action Youth Fellowship, Cohort 2.0, and a special session to mark World Environment Day. This 3-month online immersive introductory leadership certificate training fellowship program is organized by IMPRI Center for Environment, Climate Change and Sustainable Development. Before we begin, I would like to draw your attention to the importance of World Environment Day observed annually on June 5th. The theme for World Environment Day 2025 is Beat Plastic Pollution. According to United Nations Environment Programme, plastic pollution permeates every corner of the planet, even in our bodies in the form of microplastics. This year's campaign calls for collective global action to confront and eliminate plastic pollution, focusing on both systemic policy change and individual behavioral shift. At IMPRI, we believe that environmental action begins with awareness, and today's session is a step toward fostering that awareness and responsibility. The chair for the program is Ms. Bhargavi Raoji, independent researcher and educator, environment activist, Bengaluru, and a visiting senior fellow at IMPRI. The conveners of this course are Dr. Mansi Bhargavaji, Ms. Suhasini Ayerji, Professor Utpal Kumar Deji, Dr. Simi Mehta ji, and Dr. Arjun Kumar ji. The session experts for today are Dr. Ravi Chellam ji, wildlife biologist and conservation scientist, CEO, MetaString Foundation, Bangalore, India. We'll also have Ms. Karishma Rao ji, creative director and content writer, Tipoi, Bangalore, India, and Mr. Vishwesh S. Prasad, co-founder and visual director at Tipoi, Bangalore, India. Course outline and reading resources will be shared in email for your kind perusal. Before we start today's session, I would like to state the housekeeping announcement. Please join the meeting on time. There will be Q&A session after each presentation. Share your questions on the Q&A box. The questions must not be posted as an anonymous attendee. Ensure that your questions are precise and refrain from making general comments in the questions to save time. To formally begin the session, I now invite our chair, Ms. Bhargavi Raoji, to deliver the opening remarks. A warm welcome to you, ma'am. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Ria. So, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here today and for this very special session on World Environment Day 2025. It's a real pleasure and honor to have with us Dr. Ravi Chellam, and we also have Dr. Arjuna Senaviratne from Colombo. While we welcome you all, it's also time, for us to pause, reflect, and reimagine the way we live with our planet, especially our biodiversity in the context of climate change. And we are deeply privileged to have Dr. Chellam, whose decades of work in wildlife conservation and ecological policy continue to shape how we understand biodiversity, climate action, and the intricate connections between the wild and the urban. So Dr. Chellam's voice is one of clarity and deep commitment. And I know his words today will leave us both very thoughtful and challenged, as they always do. And so without wasting a time, I will hand it over back to him. We'll need more of his time. I will talk about the film later when the speakers come. Thank you, Ria. Over to you.
So thank you, ma'am. And we commence today's session by welcoming Dr. Ravi Chellamji, a distinguished wildlife biologist and conservation scientist with decades of field and policy experience. His insights today on wildlife conservation in India will help us understand the intricate connection between ecological protection and environmental governance. A warm welcome to you, sir. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Ria. Thank you, Bhargavi. Good evening. Hopefully it'll work again. Share screen. Are we good?
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay, good. So I thought I will basically start with some foundational questions and use examples for us to then have a discussion about this big question. what is wildlife conservation and how do we achieve it. I'm going to focus primarily on the Indian situation. How are things panning out? What is the current situation? What does the future look like? I'd like to thank IMPRI for giving me this opportunity, and I really look forward to the discussion after about half an hour, 40 minutes of my talk. Every citizen is either facing or is definitely aware that we are in the midst of a global environmental crisis. It's a multi-crisis. It is not a single crisis. We all talk of loss of biodiversity, but often don't think about it in terms of destruction of ecosystems. And then there is global climate change that's happening. So biodiversity and climate change is interacting. And to add kind of rub salt into our wounds, then there is land degradation. On top of that, pollution and all kinds of pollution. We don't even look at sound and light pollution. We normally think of air, water, chemical pollution, but sound and light are huge pollutants that's affecting life on Earth, not just for us, but for all beings. The last 3 or 4 points are far more important for us to reflect on. When you're having a set of global environment crises, there's just no time, space for any wars or violence in general. Because war and violence only destroy. They only add to loss of biodiversity, destruction of ecosystems, contribute greenhouse gases, degrade land, and pollute the environment. So while intervening to kind of bring about reconciliation and peace, we're actually doing conservation. Conservation is need to become party to peace negotiations, because allowing wars to go on is not helping us. Side by side, we are also having the militarization of conservation. You have heavily armed guards, often resulting in very brutal way of dealing with local people, and it's justified by saying poachers are armed. By militarizing conservation, we're only dealing with the symptoms and not dealing with the root cause. And it begs the question in terms of democratic principles, rights, and a whole host of issues which we will delve into. Nature left to herself doesn't need conservation. She can look after herself perfectly fine. It's really the consumptive and exploitative development models that human beings are increasingly bringing as part of the civilized world, so-called civilized world, that we are facing these crises. And our response is also more from a selfish perspective, saying that if we don't deal with it, human beings will have a problem. We are not still adopting an ethical, moral position that other forms of life have an equal stake or equal right to survive. And almost all these forms of life have a longer history, a longer evolutionary history, and a longer presence on Earth than human beings. In the name of conservation, there's a lot of injustices meted out. Most conservation agencies act with impunity, be it government or non-government. And several of our conservation approaches and models exclude rather than include the local communities. And in the name of whatever they call it, secrecy, national security, much of our conservation action also lacks transparency. And as a result, it also lacks accountability. And all of this feeds back into the kind of global environmental crisis that we are currently dealing with. But one thing is for sure, extinction is forever. Despite what you might have heard or read about the dire wolves, they did not bring back an extinct species to life. And it's also very, very stupid, very short-sighted, and extremely arrogant of us to think that we can cause the extinction of a species and then through technology bring it back. First of all, as you will figure out through the lecture, no species lives alone. So the extinction of a species is not just the loss of a species, but breaking of multiple threads of life that all go to form functional ecosystems. But extinction is also a natural phenomenon. There is a natural background rate of about 1 to 5 species per year, but then side by side, you have new species evolving. Due to human action, currently we estimate that we are losing species at 1,000 to 10,000 times the background rate, which means literally dozens of species are going extinct every day. Now, this is the worst period for natural life on Earth. This is the biggest species die-off since we lost the dinosaurs 65 million years ago. And currently, it's estimated at least 1 million species are at risk. These are words I found powerful. This is based on a report that WWF have come up with. The planet is in the midst of a biodiversity and climate crisis. And as I said, it's a poly crisis. There is land degradation, there is pollution, there's a lot more that we need to deal with. And the time is now for us to act, to create what he calls a nature positive future, which needs us to really transform the way we live our lives, the way we plan our lives, how we produce things, how we consume things, how we govern, and what we finance. If we continue to finance the destruction of nature, the destruction of ecosystems, there's no way that you will ever be able to stop extinction, because those budgets are going to be 1,000, 10,000, 1 million times more than what conservation budgets we get. So in our line of work, we talk of graphs and curves. So how do we bend the curve to favor biodiversity? And the good news is recovery is still possible. But unless we set extremely ambitious targets, because time is short, and really focus on conservation and restoration, but more importantly, stop the destruction, stop the drivers of biodiversity loss. We can't continue to keep destroying natural ecosystems in the name of development and hope that the world would be a better place to live. All our production and consumption have to become sustainable. There is no more time to waste on this. There is no space to waste anything, be it a drop of water, be it electricity, be it a piece of cloth, be it food. We can't afford to waste anymore. And it might seem a rather tenuous connection, but what we eat, if we are eating more and more animal protein, we are having a much larger ecological footprint on our Earth, which means loss of biodiversity. So we need to be careful about even what we eat. And biodiversity and climate change are locked together, especially for certain species which are very dependent on certain microclimates, or if they are fixed in a certain altitude. As it becomes warmer, these species are going to find it very, very difficult. And hence, all attempts at curbing climate change, restoring biodiversity, restoring degraded land, curbing pollution, all have to act together. Just making progress on one front will not benefit the others. Here is a graphical representation. The current call is that between the current decade from 2020 to 2030, which is also the UN decade for ecological restoration, we aim to achieve zero net loss of nature. We are midway through that decade. Are we anywhere close to that? The answer is clearly no. And it is predicted if we are able to achieve that and then focus on full recovery from 2030, in 2 or 3 decades, we might be able to restore nature. But time is going by, and I don't see the momentum shifting. So the ambitious goal is that by 2030, we should secure a nature-positive future. And it is similar to the goals climate change has set for itself to curb global warming, to limit it to 2 degrees and ideally 1.5 degrees centigrade. But even there, we know for a fact that we've already exceeded global warming by 1.5 degrees centigrade. So, as I've already said, nature positive means not just halting the loss of nature, but actively restoring the planet. And that is as I said, can be even from a purely selfish perspective for humanity, because without functional ecosystems, the very foundations of life on Earth is disappearing. And without those foundations, however tech savvy we might be, whatever Elon Musk might say that we can go to Mars and live, that's all just figment of imagination. It is not going to happen. And even if it happens, it will happen for the super rich, not for people like you and me. So the question, what is conservation? Is it about individuals of plants, individuals of animals, or is it about populations, or is it about habitats? Is it about functional ecosystems, landscapes? Is it about connectivity? Is it about corridors? If you had more time, we could have, at this stage itself, engaged in a discussion, but since we're running a fairly tight program, I can't ask these questions to you. I'm only going to be rhetorically asking. We can discuss that in the 10, 15 minutes we'll get at the end. It's clearly all of it. Individuals are important, but if we focus too much on individuals, we lose the big picture. It's really persistence of populations we need to focus on. And for populations to persist, habitats need to be there, and they need to be embedded in functional ecosystems, which are part of larger landscapes and which have connectivity so that animals and plants can move around and they can disperse. And without that, life can't be there, genetic connectivity can't be there. Conservation is a long game. Typically, conservation projects run for 5, 10, 15, 20 years at least. And our planning time frame has to be in the region of decades, typically 30 to 50 years. Anything shorter than that is not really reliable way of doing work. So we need commitments in terms of political leadership, in terms of finance, in terms of local community participation, in terms of the government departments that work, in terms of the research institutions that work, because it is what understanding takes. Evolution, as we know, takes place over much longer periods of time. So trying to plan for a year or 2 year doesn't make sense at all when we are engaged in conservation. Conservation, in the name of conservation, like some higher calling, we can't ignore rights, human rights, rights of other beings. We can't ignore justice. We can't but be inclusive. Any conservation project which tramps upon rights of people, which is not within the rule of law, which excludes, is conservation that's waiting to fail. If not today, definitely in the future. Are there costs related to conservation action? We often think conservation is a good thing to do. What can there be negative about? Badly planned conservation, badly implemented conservation does have costs. It has costs on the ecosystem. It has costs on the species that we are dealing with. It has costs definitely on sections of our society, which are, especially in India, which are living in these areas, which are living around these areas, sections of society which are economically poor, which are politically often very weak, and hence have very little way of pushing back on a top-down model of conservation. Who bears the cost? It's often the weaker sections of society. Who reaps the benefits? Often the more powerful, richer sections of society. Who goes on a safari? It's definitely not local community. Who talks? I mean, it's people like me. I mean, I can't remember when I last went hungry to bed. And we know for a fact that a significant proportion of our fellow citizens are going hungry to bed in fear of whether an elephant could come and raid their crop, or a leopard could come and attack them, or their livestock. So these are people who are really in the forefront of conservation, and our conservation model, our conservation approach is more excluding them rather than including and supporting them, which is a great shame. Because today in India, or India as a model, or not as a model, because we haven't quite celebrated it, the rest of the world looks upon India and actually looks in awe. We are the largest human population, 1.4 billion and growing, but look at the conservation of species that we have. And the government could claim it's because of them, the NGOs can claim it because of them, while due credit has to be given to those claims. Without the support, without the acceptance, without the tolerance, without the reverence that the common man has for nature in India, none of this would be possible. And that's what I mean by coexistence. Coexistence is not a single model. Coexistence is a range of issues. It will change over geography. It will change over the species that are involved. It change over time. But generally, most Indians accept nature as part of their lives and don't draw a line and say that is nature's territory and this is human territory. But that is changing because the official policy is drawing those lines, and traditional knowledge, acceptance, behavior also changing because of that. In terms of direct action, conservation involves protection of species from extinction. And for that, we need to maintain, restore habitats, ensure connectivity. And from our selfish perspective, we are enhancing ecosystem services, which will produce water, fix carbon, produce food for us, and so on, and overall protecting biodiversity. It has aspects related to the biological elements, equally important, the abiotic elements, the rocks, the soil, the flowing rivers, all of which are pretty critical to be able to achieve conservation in the long term. But these are not static goals. We are also engaging with ecosystem processes because the ecosystem is an extremely dynamic thing, and that includes evolution. And we all know evolution is talked about at least in decades, if not longer time frames of centuries and multiple centuries. Couple of models of conservation. Currently, India has adopted what we call as the fortress model of conservation, which is a protected area centric model. And it believes that biodiversity protection is achieved primarily through creating protected areas. In India, we have multiple models of protected areas. You have the wildlife sanctuaries, national parks, community reserves, conservation reserves. Then you have tiger reserve, then you have elephant reserves, and so on and so forth. And all these protected areas believe in excluding people. Now, not just people, but from human disturbance. This is where it gets a little tricky because with climate change operating, how are we going to keep climate change out of any protected area? It is global. If it's going to rain heavily, it's going to rain. I mean, whatever the boundary on a map, the rain doesn't know that that part is protected area and this part is human territory, right? So climate change is operating there. So while we think we are excluding human disturbance, we clearly are not. And who is responsible for creating this climate change? Who has the most large ecological footprint? It's not these indigenous people. It's not the local community. It's people like you and me. We consume more. Our lifestyle is carbon heavy, but the costs are again paid by the local people. So the false assumption, which is the foundation of the fortress or protectionist model, is that local people use natural resources in irrational and destructive ways and hence cause biodiversity loss and environmental degradation. I just called it out saying local people in certain sections in certain time might, but collectively it is the more developed civilized sections of, or no, I can't call it civilized, more developed and richer sections of society which are the problem and not the local people. So this whole fortress model is based on extremely illogical and untenable assumptions. So there are three principles which drive the fortress model. You have to exclude local people. The enforcement, that's where the militarization comes, is implemented by park rangers using fines, fencing, and in certain places even shooting to kill. And only tourism, not in India, but in other countries, safari hunting and scientific research are considered as appropriate uses within protected areas. But the question to really ask is, who came first? The local people or the protected area? And clearly the answer is, especially in a country as large and as long-lived as India, the indigenous people have been living and interacting and modeling and creating various forms of ecosystems much before we even thought of a protected area. So this dispossession, this displacement, this exclusion of local communities is further kind of exacerbated by calling them as criminals, encroachers, poachers, squatters, call it what you want. And hence, not only are they losing their native lands, their native access, which they've had for generations, centuries, they then are called all these things, negative things, and hence almost everywhere, local people are against protected areas and hence unlikely to support the conservation goals which these protected areas are supposed to achieve. What does the evidence say? And this is evidence from across the world. And this is not very old. This is what, 4 or 5 years ago. Why protecting indigenous communities can also help save the earth. Indigenous people are the critical guardians of biodiversity, and we need to learn from them. Indigenous peoples proven to sustain biodiversity and address climate change. Now it's time to recognize and support this leadership. Now, not only do they have knowledge, they have experience, it's also very, very less expensive to use these models because these are people going along with their lives and ensuring conservation. This is not a heavy bureaucracy with vehicles and wireless sets and so on and so forth to conserve. And this has been researched even in India. This is a paper based on Indian research beyond forest conservation, the long-term integration of natural social science research for an inclusive conservation practice in India. So the data is there, the models are there, the knowledge is there. What is lacking is a willingness to listen, learn, and incorporate this in day-to-day conservation action. This is a much more recent UN-sponsored report. This is the platform for biodiversity and ecosystem services. It is like the IPCC for climate change. And their report, which was late last year, so less than a year ago, also highlights indigenous and local knowledge as key to transformative change when it comes to biodiversity conservation. And lo and behold, in India, we have a very strong movement of community conserved areas, which are voluntarily conserved by local communities. And these, again, predate our national parks and wildlife sanctuaries by centuries. And these are people wanting to conserve for a variety of reasons, because of landscape values, biodiversity values, cultural, religious significance, or ecosystem service. There might be a spring there from which they get water regularly, so they want to preserve it. You might have heard of sacred groves, and sacred groves is one type of community conserved areas. And this is not really given the kind of legal support, the kind of funding that other forms of official protected areas get. It is true that CCAs are generally small compared to the official protected areas, but they are far more important because they are based on voluntary efforts. It's based on a community ownership. So there is really no attempt at destroying these or degrading these, and it's voluntarily managed by local people, people who are respected in their society. And that is based on a very deep conservation ethic, and that really is what is critical for the world to be a better place. That people do this from an ethical, moral perspective rather than because they are paid a salary to do it. And there are wonderful resources. This is one example of a website. This is the Community Conserved Areas website for South Asia. And this has hundreds of examples with full details, including location, maps, the kind of species that are found, the histories of these places, stories from these places, right across India and wider, including South Asian countries. Now, having talked about models of conservation, the kind of threats that we are facing, what kind of conservation actions can we kind of plan to take? First and foremost, without habitat, you can't do conservation. So site and area protection becomes very important, and hence a proper management, an informed management of these sites. But sites in general tend to be small, and hence you need to have connectivity across a much wider landscape, which is why existing natural corridors we have to protect. We often hear of roads cutting through, canals cutting through, dams cutting through wildlife movement corridors, and that's not a good thing at all. We can move this forward by protecting grasslands for certain species or forests for certain species. So resource and habitat protection and management become important. And management today is very, very critical. Just leaving nature to take care of itself is no longer tenable because climate change is operating, because invasive species have come in, because people have modified the way nature works. In certain cases, highly endangered species, critically endangered species, we might have to step up to protect those species. A good example in India for us, for instance, is how the tigers had a close brush with extinction, but with effort over the decades, we have managed to bring it back. And we will delve into that in a little bit time. Today, 40–50% of our natural habitats, including urban areas, are overrun by invasive species. Its invasive species are caused by human action. They don't come by natural means. And this is again something we have to focus on if we want to restore the ecology and ecosystem function. In certain cases, we might have to reintroduce animals. I studied the lions for my PhD, and there has been a long-standing program for reintroducing Asiatic lions from Gir to Kuno, and we'll get into it a little bit later as to why that has still not happened. In certain other cases, we might want to undertake captive breeding, and ecological restoration becomes a common underpinning action for all habitats, all ecologies, all species, because that's how bad our current state is. In all of this, we have to engage, include, learn from local communities. We have to educate and raise awareness. And that education and awareness is not really directed at local communities, but at our policymakers, at our judiciary, at our media, at our general citizenry. Very often, this education awareness is focused on local communities as if they don't know how to live with wildlife. It's clearly wrong for us to make that assumption. It's a little rich because they don't cause the problems. It's our policymakers, it's our bureaucrats, it's our judges who really need a far greater awareness about how nature functions and what our current situation is. Laws need to change, policies need to change to be inclusive, to look at nature not as something external, but something that is fundamental to life on Earth. There are various ways of doing it, including providing incentives for livelihoods and economic incentives, and generally adopting a more sustainable development mode of life. There's a great need for us to rethink what is conservation, how do we do conservation, what models of conservation do we want to adopt, and I've explained why we need to do that. It's equally important for us to rethink what is development. Development can no longer be based on destroying functional ecosystem, destroying nature. We all know what that actually results in. So we need to be careful about the language you use, because development will have a positive connotation. But if you're going to develop by filling up a lake and building some buildings on, that doesn't make it development. That's actually destruction. And we need to call it out. And look at the term real estate. I mean, as if areas of nature are not real. It's only when we destroy and build using concrete and steel that becomes real estate. I mean, we need to think about these things. Then this whole notion of national security, and that national security is by strong borders, by building fence, by building a huge armed forces and so on and so forth. What is this notion of national security if most of us have to breathe polluted air, drink polluted water, be assaulted by light and sound pollution, and a significant proportion of our fellow citizens go hungry to bed, don't have access to education, don't have access to healthcare. So what is this national security? And I think citizens need to reimagine what really is national security. We can't be investing so much in what are essentially destructive action. We need to mind the language you use, and that goes to conservationists, journalists, policymakers, everyone included. We often keep talking of elephants are straying, tigers are straying, leopards are straying. Are they straying? What does straying mean? That it's lost its way. Do elephants lose their way? Do tigers lose their way? Or do human beings lose their way? So And when you think of it as straying, the response is to catch it and take it somewhere and release it. And that is the worst thing you can do. It creates only more problems. Then we talk of man eaters. We talk of rogue elephants, all of which provides a completely negative frame of reference when we think of these animals and their behavior without really going into the root cause. And increasingly, the answer to conservation problems is announcing really big budget projects, 1,000 crores, 2,000 crores. Conservation doesn't need that kind of money. We all know when you announce that kind of big money, what happens to the money. And even development doesn't really need those kind of big budget problems. What it needs is proper, logical, knowledge-based, inclusive planning and implementation. And that's not what we are seeing. And fundamentally, as a society, India needs to step up and value rule of law. Currently, we do not respect rule of law sufficiently. All of us are looking for jugaad, for ways of getting things done, cutting corners, even if it means jumping red lights. It's not a joke how often I get honked at when I stop at a traffic light. What's happened to us that we can't be civil to each other and really follow basic rules in life? Look at this. Can you even wrap your mind around that number? How big that number is? I mean, for a lion conservation program, so many 1,000 crores of rupees, and we still haven't followed a 2013 Supreme Court order of translocating lions from Gir to Puno, giving one excuse or the other. Absolute nonsense. While you're doing that, what are we doing? We are destroying one of our most biodiverse parts of the country, the Great Nicobar. Destroying the lives of some of our most primitive fellow citizens. I shouldn't say primitive, most natural living fellow citizens, tribal Champagne, who live in the forest, who don't require mobile phones, television, electricity, tap water. They know how to make their lives. But what are we doing? We're going and destroying them. As if we didn't have enough problems, we want to introduce African species in India. And this has no honest intention. This is really to continue to stall and delay lion translocation. And I've written and spoken extensively about it. And then the cherry on top of all of this is this new beast called Vantara. And we don't have the time and space to discuss it. But this is really one rich man's stamp collection. Don't be deluded by it. It has nothing to do with animal welfare. It has nothing to do with animal rescue. And anyway, most animals don't need to be rescued. And it definitely has nothing to do with conservation. And these are two brilliant articles, highly well-researched, written by extremely respectable and dependable journalists. You guys should look it up. If you want, I can share them. Now, let's get back to Project Tiger. And this is the last I could find in terms of an official announcement. This was made in December of 2023, and it pats everybody on the back and says we've done well, so on and so forth. There's not one word of what impact Project Tiger has had on local communities. This is a much more recent news report, barely 3 or 4 days ago, and you're talking now of people who are displaced, saying that tiger reserves have destroyed their lives. Is this the just way of doing things? Don't tribal or fellow citizens deserve the respect? How will you feel if somebody comes tomorrow and says you have to vacate because something needs to be conserved? As I already said, coexistence is the name of the game for most Indians. And I'm part of this consortium. We are trying to gather stories, case studies, encourage people, change the conservation narrative. Do look us up. I'll be happy to engage with all of you in the future in this platform. Remember a few things. I haven't had much time to go into these things, so I just put them as bullet points. India today, for nearly 20 years, has had the Forest Rights Act. This act was a belated recognition of the fact that as a country, we have done very poorly with our fellow tribal citizens. And this act is to give a legal framework for the rights that these people possessed and the rights that we, in the name of conservation development, have dispossessed them of. So the Forest Right Act is not a right-giving act, but it's a right-legitimizing act. It recognizes, the preamble says, this is to undo the historical injustice. And that's how it needs to be viewed. But unfortunately, a lot of the conservation people, the forest department has taken completely a negative view on it. They even filed cases in the Supreme Court. It's still being heard. But where it's been implemented well, tribal people have benefited, as has conservation. The act of establishing protected areas has created a large, millions of people as conservation refugees. And that's something we need to keep in mind. I just mentioned about coexistence. And we have to recognize in a rich civilization like India, there are diverse systems of knowledge. There's not one way that we know the world. And we have to respect, recognize, and integrate these systems of knowledge. And I've just now said about rule of law, we cannot afford to keep compromising on rule of law. What is the way forward? I think I've listed a few values which are absolutely vital if we have to achieve true conservation. First and foremost is the importance of developing empathy. Empathy not just for people, our fellow citizens, but other beings, because without empathy, how do we even, what shall I say, do right by them? We have to approach these issues with humility. We can't come with the arrogance saying, oh, I have a PhD. We have to learn to respect everyone in this game. We have to be generous. Most of us come with resources, knowledge, social backing, which is placing us in a bit of a pedestal. So we have to come with generosity. We have to approach each situation with curiosity. We can't afford all the challenges that we face, the defeats we might face, to dim our passion, enthusiasm, and most importantly, our courage. Conservation requires long-term commitment, requires courageous action. We have to be able to speak truth to power. Justice, transparency, accountability, and inclusion are a total non-negotiable. All of us have to learn to be content in life. All of it has to learn to love ourselves, love our fellow beings, love our fellow citizens. And that affection, I think, provides a wonderful foundation for all our thinking and function. In conclusion, we have to recognize there is asymmetry in power and budgets, and hence act with respect, act with humility. Destruction of functional natural ecosystems is definitely not development, and we have to stop that. We have to call it out. Conservation without justice and inclusion is not conservation, how much ever you can dress it up. Big budgets does not necessarily translate into either good development or good conservation outcomes. And conservation is definitely part of the democratic political process, and we have to accordingly prepare and engage with it. This is what I said right at the beginning. Rachel Carson, one of my heroes, wrote this way back in 1962. In nature, nothing exists alone. If you have that frame of reference, you will begin to appreciate, recognize, and respect the value of every single being and every single relationship in nature. I would like to end by a call for action. I have a chat. How are you doing in terms of time?
So we have time.
We have time? Okay, good.
Yeah.
There can be no further delays for action. No more excuses, no more ifs and buts. We cannot allow further degradation and destruction of the environment in the name of development. We have to understand and practice that public pressure is effective. And for public pressure to operate, we need to learn to network, we need to learn to function as coalitions. We all have to demand immediate action and much better performance. And that's going to happen only if each of us take action in our own unique ways, both individually as well as collectively and collaboratively. What's happening? Okay. We have to get the younger generation involved. We really have to start young. It can be as young as a couple of years. The younger we are exposed to the magic of nature, to the mysteries of nature, to the wonder of nature, the better we would be both as individuals and as active citizens. Each of us have to constantly, on a daily basis, review the choices we are making, the purchasing choices we make, the traveling choices we make, the political choices we make, the kind of language you choose to use, both in writing and in spoken. There is still hope, but we can't keep riding on this hope because time is short and that window is really closing. We could soon be overwhelmed to the extent that abilities of both nature and humanity to adapt would be so curtailed that even if we completely reverse process in 5 or 10 years down the line, that might still be too late. So we really have to take advantage of the remaining time for us to. These are also things that we do in the name of conservation. This is from around Nagarhole. The fence is built in the name of trying to protect people, and look at what happens. This is because it's unscientific, it's not thought through, and it is having devastating impacts on wildlife. I want to end on a happy note. As I said, I studied the lions for my PhD. This is my first photograph of a lion. This is way back in December of 1985, so nearly 40 years ago. I grew up in Madras, which is now called Chennai. I studied Hindi in school, didn't do great. So when I went to Gujarat, I had my broken Hindi and really no Gujarati and to speak. And so when I first went there in December 85, I went there on an exploratory kind of visit. I had 4 days there, and the forest department, very hospitable, gave me a local guide, a 10, 15, I think 15-year-old boy from the local village. He spoke only Kathiawadi. He didn't even speak Gujarati, and I spoke broken Hindi, but we got along well. So 4 days of driving around, walking around, I saw lion pug marks, I saw lion droppings, I saw kill remains, I heard them roar at night, but I didn't see a single lion. And I was beginning to worry. I quit a marketing career to get into wildlife. If I can't even see my study subject, how am I going to get data for my PhD? This was the last evening. We were walking out. The gate was still about 4 or 5 kilometers away. And this is Western India, so this was well past 6 o'clock, but still there was light. And from about 100 meters, suddenly from the bush emerged 4 lions. And I was scared. First time at close quarters, I was seeing large cats. I hadn't seen a tiger till then. I'd seen a leopard once, but that was a little far off in a safe kind of distance. But these lions seemed to mean business. They were coming towards us. So I looked at this guy and said, "Kya karna?" He just put his finger to his lips and indicated I needed to keep quiet. Okay, I held my breath, kept quiet. The lions kept coming towards us. I kept looking at him. He seemed very relaxed. As they kept coming, I realized, oh man, I have my binoculars, I have my camera, I should use them. But by the time I could focus, 3 of those lions had disappeared in the bush. I got this picture. Not a great picture, but being my first picture, I value it a lot. It took me about 6 months to do this. This is me in the foreground and 3 lions in the background. Picture taken by my PhD guy, Dr. AJT Johnson, and clearly he had to use a wide angle lens to get us, which means I'm barely 5 meters away from the lions. What do I have to do this? As part of my study, I needed to identify individual lions. Unlike tigers and leopards and jaguars, lions don't have marks on their body. So you have to look at what we call as vibrissae or whisker spot patterns to be able to identify them. And you can see the kind of grass vegetation there. You can have the best binoculars, you can have the best telescope, the best telephoto lens. But if you're 15, 20 meters away, all you will get is vegetation. So I had to quietly learn to deal with these animals, go close up, and to be able to identify them. Here, there's a subadult male, radio collared. If you look carefully, you can see the radio collar. He was sleeping in a hot May afternoon. I crept up slowly, took a picture with a, I think, 110 mm lens. He heard the trigger go. And look at his response, curiosity rather than aggression. And that's me taking a picture of an adult male, and you can see my own shadow. So these animals are brilliant, special animals. who allow this kind of access. This in no way to say that they are tame. They are very wild. They can capture sambar, nilgai, which weigh 2, 3 times their body weight. People are attacked, people are killed occasionally, but these also allow this kind of special access. When African lion researchers see these pictures, they think I'm suicidal. I don't know whether I'll do it today, but that was an younger me, that was a more adventurous me, and I knew what I was doing. I had lived there for 4.5 years, and I learned how to deal with these animals. Nature is also about sites like these. We often, especially living in cities, forget to look out, to see sunrises, to see sunsets, to see the star, to observe clouds, the lightning, the rain. Learn to enjoy nature. Don't get cloistered just within our day-to-day schedules and our buildings, because that way we lose connections. I want to thank all of you for patient listening, Bhargavi for inviting me, IMPRI for providing me this platform, and for the cohort, second cohort of this course. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for your insightful and powerful reflections. I now invite our chair, Ms. Bhargavi Raoji, to kindly share her observations and remarks. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Ria, and thanks, Dr. Chellam, for that brilliant lecture. I think that was a perfect message one could get on the World Environment Day. Instead of comments, I would just ask you for a little more conversation. So my question would be, given the increasing centralization of environmental decision making in India, what would your advice be with respect to the role of young, independent scientific voices that are emerging, and the local community-related institutions in protecting biodiversity and also democratic accountability, if I can say that?
That's a tough one. I mean, the laws are in place. There are frameworks. You're supposed to have local biodiversity management committees. You're supposed to have local forest rights committees. But we don't resource them. We don't build the capacity. We don't enable them. We don't empower them. The fact is, those who have power, those who have resources are not going to let go of it, which is why collective citizen action, and we have to learn to bridge knowledge systems. We have to learn to bridge social class, social structures to be able to make this happen. It is not easy, but it is also not impossible. We have to approach this with hope, energy, and fervor. We have to believe that this change is possible, because unless this change happens, the future is not looking very bright, because who can be more informed of the local environment than the people who live and experience it on a daily basis? And if we approach them with respect, with humility, and learn to work together, I think conservation will become a way of life rather than a project-based activity.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Ria, in the interest of time, maybe we could open questions from the participants.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
The floor is now open for the Q&A session, and the fellows are requested to either use the raise hand feature or post their questions in the Q&A box or chat box. We have our first question by Shrish Pandeji in the chat box. Animal agriculture drives biodiversity loss. 69% of wildlife wiped out since 1970, largely due to habitat destruction and grazing and feed. What suggestions you have for animal agriculture? No one talks about it.
Well, I did mention about the need to move more and more into plant-based diets, and that my converse was about talking about animal agriculture. Fortunately, in India, we don't quite have the kind of animal agriculture that you see in South Central America, in the US, maybe in Australia, and New Zealand. But what India is doing wrong is not recognizing the value of nomadic communities, people who move with the season, who know where the resources are, who are not stuck to a particular place. And they are seen as uncivilized and primitive ways of life. They're actually very, very well informed of ecology And not by not staying in one place, their ecological footprint at a particular place is always going to be lesser. And instead of destroying those lives, we really need to revive and encourage that form of life. So one is allowing our diets to be more plant-based, and two, to get back to animal agriculture in a more natural, sustainable fashion rather than these kind of poultry farms that we have. I don't even know whether that meat is good for us in terms of the amount of chemicals and antibiotics that go in. These animals are stressed, which means their stress hormones are going to be there. So it is even in our own selfish interest that we need to change that paradigm.
So next, we have a question by Dr. Bamadev Shittalji. Namaste. As we have endogenous conservation practices in South Asian countries, could we replicate? Knowledge sharing will support on boosting conservation on sustainable way.
I think he meant indigenous conservation practices. Absolutely. I mean, the platform I shared, which is the CCA network platform, is about documentation, sharing knowledge. There are some challenges sometimes because language can become a bit of a challenge, but we all have to learn to become multilingual if you want to function in India and the larger South Asian context. There's no way that we can just use English or a single language. This is absolutely vital, but again, the challenge there is because of the conservation models and practices we are adopting, we are eroding these practices. We're calling these primitive. We are often calling these are not official conservation practices. So that also we need a policy shift in recognizing and celebrating this knowledge systems and conservation practices.
Any other questions from the participants? So meanwhile, I'd like to ask a question. So given this year's World Environment Day theme, beat plastic pollution, how do you see plastic waste impacting wildlife habitats, particularly in protected areas or buffer areas?
See, plastic, like climate change, is now in every um, square meter of the world. Um, and you heard about microplastic even being found in human bloodstream and even in human brains. So, unfortunately, uh, in a very short span of time, in barely 5 or 6 decades, we allowed this monster of plastic to invade our lives. It is in the name of convenience. It is in the name of so-called low cost that it's coming. A simple thing like not using a disposable plastic fork or a plastic spoon is still not recognized by many of us. There are in India wooden alternatives, which means you're also giving livelihood for people at the local community level. So there are two questions to it. One, how do we slow down this process? Two, how do we clean up our act? Slowing down is in each of our hands. What kind of choices we exercise? Are we going to consume more plastic? Are we going to stop consuming plastic? And how do we dispose the plastic we consume? Cleanup is a much larger, much longer term, much technical thing. I don't know whether you guys have heard about this enormous, several square kilometers garbage of plastic floating around in the ocean. There are specific areas where ocean currents carry this plastic waste. So not only in land, we're flushing it into the ocean. We're even polluting, and not all the plastic stays afloat. Even the deepest depths of the ocean have found plastic. So this is not an easy ask, but realization, using information, awareness, knowledge to dictate how we proceed is a step in the right direction. But it also, we all know smoking is bad, but several of us take up smoking. So I sometimes wonder whether just knowledge and awareness does the trick. There has to be a carrot and stick policy.
Thank you, sir. I have another question in the chat box by Mohammad Ghani Afridi ji. So, how does illegal wildlife trade accelerate species extinction and disrupt global biodiversity? And what can be done to effectively curb this transnational environmental crime?
See, this trade is a demand, like any other market, is demand and supply. As you all might know, till fairly recently, till a few decades back, it was legal to trade in elephant ivory in India. So, in Asian elephants, only the majority of males carry tusks. You also have tuskless males called magnas. The females do not carry tusks, unlike the African elephants. So, if you want to get ivory, you're not waiting for a male elephant to die. You're going and poaching, killing, hunting, call it what you want, to extract the ivory. To the extent that the sex ratio of adult male to adult female in several elephant populations got skewed, which means there were very few males compared to the females, which meant genetic diversity was going down. Even females getting pregnant, that rate was being reduced because the males were just not there. So I'm just giving you one example, but you might have heard about rhino horn, you might have heard about chartreuse, you might have heard about pangolin meat and pangolin scales. It's amazing how human beings seem to find some or the other aphrodisiac property in insects to mammals to plants to any kind of things. Several plants are also endangered because of illegal trade. So excessive use, collection in a short period of time, targeted killing, all of which create the supply chain for illegal wildlife trade, is what accelerates extinction and disrupts global biodiversity. What can be done to curb and protect wildlife? It's again a rule of law issue. All of this is illegal. Corruption has to stop. Stronger intelligence sharing has to be there, on the ground patrolling, inclusive patrolling with local communities. Most local communities know who the poacher is and what the supply lines are. But we are treating the community members also as an enemy rather than as a partner in this.
Any other questions from the fellows? Thank you, sir, for the enlightening session and your patient responses to our questions. And yeah, we have another question, I guess. So can we take one more question?
Yeah.
So we have a question by Niyanta Chauhanji. Good evening, sir. Can we know more on how government is really working in conservation sector? Is this as effective as it's shown?
Well, I think through the presentation, I've tried to convey a message that while we've done well, we have not necessarily done right by our fellow citizens. We are not necessarily done right by allocating unrealistically large budgets. We are not necessarily done right by saying that we have created protected areas and our wildlife can be protected there, but outside of protected areas, we will do what? That's not the way conservation works, because every action, every piece of land, air, water is connected. So you can't expect protected areas to survive as islands. So, Niyanta, to answer your question, in general, India has done well. Could India have done better? Definitely, by multiple fold, India could have done better. We have failed in protecting the rights and livelihoods of local communities. We have failed in protecting connectivity of habitats. We have even failed in dealing with things like invasive species, and definitely we don't have an answer for climate change. So there's a lot more that needs to be done. Of course, our publicity by the government does present a rosy picture. They're even claiming the Cheetah project to be a success. And the numbers game, I mean, we keep almost every now and then we get thrown numbers at us. Tigers are so many. The whole population estimation technology process is all flawed, and it's definitely behind a black box. Other scientists who don't belong to the government don't even get a chance to work with those data which is collected by Indian taxpayers' money. So we can improve a lot by being much more transparent, inclusive, participatory, and accountable to the people of this country. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions?
Anything else?
No, sir. The questions are done, and thank you so much for your enlightening session. And we eagerly anticipate your participation in future IMPRI events, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Kindly excuse me for reasons I've already told you.
No,
Sure.
Thank
thank you.
you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Chellam, and safe travels.
Thanks. Bye.
Yeah. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
I now invite Mr. Arjun Seneviratneji to share his thoughts on the theme of World Environment Day 2025. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Ria. Just very quickly, I won't take much of your time. Uh, just basically from a South Asian perspective, we are. South Asia is not necessarily a very big producer of plastics, but it is actually one of the greatest contributors to pollution because of plastics. And let us very, very quickly realize that this problem is one of absolute carelessness about what is going on in the world, what is going on the planet. And as Ravi said, it is not just about awareness. I was looking at the statistics the other day. 96% of the people of South Asia know that plastics are bad. They know that single use plastics are terrible. 87% would want these removed permanently through some mechanism. Bans are not going to work, but through some mechanism. But only 14% have alternative ways of or alternative methods for the processes that they were using those plastics for, especially single-use plastics. For example, no one, almost nobody, had containers that could hold drink or food. So the packaging industry in this part of the world is 63.62% of all plastics, and that's all single use. And all of that ends up either in landfills or gets hopefully recycled to some extent, but a lot of it carelessly gets is mismanaged. Primarily, okay, from a circular economy perspective, you have this reduce, reuse, recycle effect. But the reduce component, there are two subcomponents to that. That is reject and refuse. People must be able to reject plastics and refuse plastics. The refusal part of it is you do not bag an already packaged uh, item in the supermarket in another shopping bag, at the very least. You don't do that. If you do that, then that means that you're actually being a very irresponsible and very careless citizen of the world and a citizen of their country. So don't do that, because every little piece of plastic that you take, as Ravi said, it has now permeated to every single part of the planet. And it is damaging us to an extent that is absolutely crazy. If you look at the Himalayan snowman from 2020 to 2025, you look at the NASA photographs, you will see how seriously the snow line has receded. And a big part of that is microplastics and black carbon. Because both of microplastics, especially black carbon, yes, to some extent also, because they actually they change, they reduce the albedo, which means that the ability of snow to reflect light is taken off. The minute that happens, light penetrates into the snow, it heats it up and melts it. And do what we don't realize is that the Himalayas are like maybe 100,000 miles away. but your action here is contributing to that. Remember, if the snowmelt continues for another 5 years, the entire Indian subcontinent is going to be water stressed. 750 million people are going to be in serious, serious water stress, and you contributed to that. What you must realize is it's not whether the other person does it or not, it is that you shall not contribute. You have to start with yourself. Don't try crusades at the moment. Just heal yourself. Make sure that you don't contribute. If you don't contribute, then and only then do you have a right to speak for the rest of the people. You have a right to tell other people. You have a right to encourage other people to do the same. And in this world, especially in our part of the world, the only way it really works is either with a stick or by showing it by example. And showing by example is not always going to work. Sometimes you have to use a stick. I'll give you an example from Sri Lanka. Back in, I think, during the time of the Mahinda Rajapaksa regime, there was open dumping. So what he did was he issued, these bans have been there for years, but he issued a formal ban saying that people will be thrown in jail if they dumped openly. People didn't care. So what he did, and this was being done by everybody, not just the people with low income, but people were coming in SUVs and dumping as well. So what he did was he caught the people who were rich, who were coming and dumping in SUVs, and threw them in jail. 10 of them were thrown in jail. Richest people in the country. Open dumping stopped in a week. You need that kind of brutality sometimes to stop something from happening. In fact, because of that change, he did that for that, and he did it for smoking. And because of that, if you look at Sri Lanka, Sri Lanka does not have open dumping now. Sri Lanka does not smoke. Sri Lankans do not smoke on the streets. It cannot be done. And the mindset changed over a period of 3 months. And you can do that. But to do that, you don't have to have your enforcement agencies are there, your laws are there, your policies are there. But when you enforce it, you have to enforce it for a very brief time, extremely brutally. Because people don't, especially in our part of the world, they don't realize that they're damaging things until you hit them. I'm really sorry, but this is how you must do this. So if you are going to pick the plastic habit, one of the things you have to do is to heal yourself. The second is that the enforcement of legislature must be brutal. Cannot be done by patting someone in the head and say, guys, this is wrong, don't do this. It doesn't work. Not in our part of the world. You have to literally kick them all over the planet before they realize that something is wrong. Thank you. That's all I need to say. Just make sure that you do this in that way. Think about it in that way and approach it as a person who thinks that that person is responsible. Don't be careless. Be careful. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your insightful and thought provoking reflections on the theme of the World Environment Day 2025. We now move to our next session, and we now welcome Ms. Karishma Raoji and Mr. Vishwesh S. Prasad ji from Tipoy, Bengaluru. They will be screening their short film Waste and the City, a creative and critical look at urban waste, environmental responsibility, and storytelling for change. The screening will be followed by a discussion with the experts. We warmly welcome you both. The floor is yours.
Thanks, Bhargavi. Thank you, Bhargavi, for
Thank
taking us
you.
into this. And thanks to IMPRI, for thinking of us as experts. We're not. We're anything but experts. We're only trying to contribute in our own way using our own medium, which is media. Just a quick introduction. I'm here with Vishwesh, although I don't see him on screen, but both of us are part of Teapoy. Teapoy is a media production house based out of Bangalore. and we're both co-founders. We began our journey over 10 years ago, looking at themes which were related to culture and heritage, because archival was very important to us and continues to be. Along that journey, we found a lot more things to care about and contribute, which related to the city, civic issues especially. And through that journey, we were fortunate to meet the folks from ESG, you know, Bhargavi and Leo. So since then, our learning curve just increased. And one of the things that we were able to contribute to is to create a glimpse, an audiovisual glimpse, one could call it, of one of their projects, which was the closure of the Mavalipura landfill. And that's what this film basically represents. Well, a frozen, well, why I say frozen is because it was a 20+ year endeavor by ESG. But we tried to capture a glimpse of that post the closure, which took us about a year and a half to complete. And you will see the community members involved who have also spoken and been part of the film, apart from Leo and Bhargavi. We've tried to bring in the report as well, the reports that led to, empowerment of this community that led to the closure. So we've tried to just capture that journey. And yeah, I think we can take questions post the film screening. We can head right into the film.
Thank you, Karishma. Who will be screening it?
Would you need us to do this unless any of you are already ready with it?
Last time we had some technical issues. Last week we screened the film, but half of our audience couldn't get the audio. So I'm just wondering if
Should we
do
try?
it?
And if you share the link with me, I can also try if that is okay with you.
Right away. Ria, just if you could ensure to, I'm just sharing the link. If you could ensure that your noise cancellation is off, because that's what happened the last time there was a concern. So I think on Zoom, you'll have to change your settings.
Sure.
The problem of waste management in India has largely been one of out of sight, out of mind. The waste we throw out is more than a representation of what we don't need. It is what we are. We like to dispose waste and believe it goes away, and we don't care about the people who collect these disposals, and they also disappear in our imagination of who we are. They just don't matter to us. So this is not how the rest of the world is. There's a lot of empathy, and I think in our country we are losing that empathy very quickly. In 1976, we had IPD Salapa, who was asked by then Chief Minister Devarajas to go around and see the condition of workers across the state. And he wrote this report and submitted to the Chief Minister, in which he describes the condition of these workers. And if you compare what he wrote then with the condition today, there is hardly any difference.
When it comes to the solid waste workers of our city, very little has changed. This is because the nature of collecting waste from households has been the same. Predominantly the lower castes are the ones who are employed for this job.
ಯಾಕಂದ್ರೆ ನಾವು ದಲಿತರು, ನಮಗಿರೋದು ಅದೇ ಕೆಲಸ. ನಮಗೆ ಆ ಕೆಲಸ ಬಿಟ್ಟರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಕೆಲಸ ಸಿಗಲ್ಲ. ಬೇರೆ ಕೆಲಸಕ್ಕೆ ಹೋದ್ರೆ ಏನು ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ? ಇವ್ರ ಕಸ ಎತ್ತಕ್ಕವರು, ಇವ್ರ ಕೈಯೆಲ್ಲ ಗಲೀಜಿದೆ, ಮೈಯೆಲ್ಲ ವಾಸನೆ ಬರ್ತಾ ಇದೆ. ಅವ್ರ ಪಕ್ಕದಲ್ಲಿ ನಿಂತ್ಕೊಂಡಿರೋರು ಏನು ಮಾಡ್ತಾರೆ? ಮೂಗಿಗೆ ಖರ್ಚು ಬಿಟ್ಕೊಂತಾರೆ. ನಾವು ಇಡೀ ನಗರ ಸ್ವಚ್ಛಗೊಳಿಸಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಮುಖದಿಂದ ಖರ್ಚು ತೆಗೆದು ಬಿಸಾಕಕ್ಕೆ ಹೇಳಿ ಬೇರೆಯವ್ರ ಮುಖಕ್ಕೆ ನಾವು ಖರ್ಚು ಬಿಡಿರಿ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇದೀವ. ನಾವು ಕಷ್ಟಪಟ್ಟಿದ್ದೀವಿ, ಹುಳಗಳಾಗುತ್ತೆ ಕಸದಲ್ಲಿ, ಬರೀ ಕೈಯಿಂದ ಎತ್ತಾಕ್ತಿವಿ. ಕಾಲು ತೊಳ್ಕೊಳಕ್ ನೀರಿಲ್ಲ, ಆದ್ರೆ ಕಾಲೆಲ್ಲ ರಸ ತರ ಸುರಿತಾರೆ ಕಸದಿಂದ. ಆ ಕಸನ ಎತ್ಕೊಂಡು ನಾವು ಮನೆಗೆ ಹೋಗ್ತೀವಿ. ಚಿಕ್ಕ ಚಿಕ್ಕ ಮಕ್ಕಳಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ಆಯ್ತಾ? ಆ ವಾಸನೆ ಮಕ್ಕಳು ಕುಡಿತಾರೆ. ನಮ್ಮ ಸಂಘಟನೆಯಲ್ಲಿ ನಮ್ಮ ಪೌರ ಕಾರ್ಮಿಕರು ಡಾಕ್ಟರ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತೀವಿ. ಯಾಕೆ? ಇಡೀ ನಗರವನ್ನು ಸ್ವಚ್ಛಗೊಳಿಸೋರು, ಅವರು ಸಮಾಜ ಇಡೀ ಕ್ಲೀನ್ ಮಾಡೋರು, ಅವರು ಡಾಕ್ಟ್ರು.
ವಯಸ್ಸಾಗಿದ್ದು ಮನೆಗೆ ಎಲ್ಲರಿಗೂ ದೊಡ್ಡಾಗ್ತವ್ರೆ. ಆ ದೊಡ್ಡಾಗ್ತವ್ರಿಗೆ ಏನಿಲ್ಲ, ಇಷ್ಟು ವರ್ಷ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಿದೀವಿ, ಏನಾರ ಕೊಡ್ರಿ, ಏನಿಲ್ಲ, ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಿದೀವಿ, ಸಂಬಳ ತಗೊಂಡಿದ್ದೀವಿ, ನಡಿ ಮನೆಗೆ, ಏನ್ ಕೊಡ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂತ ಕೇಳ್ತಾರೆ. ಇವತ್ತು ನಮ್ಗೆ ಮಕ್ಕಳು ಇದು ಕೊಡ್ತಾರ, ಊಟ ಹಾಕ್ತಾರ, ಸೊಸೈಟಿ ಊಟ ಹಾಕ್ತಾರ, ಇಲ್ಲ ಗಂಡು ಮಕ್ಳು ಊಟ ಹಾಕ್ತಾರ, ಯಾರು ಹಾಕ್ತಾರೆ? ನಾವು ಇಷ್ಟು ವರ್ಷ ಕೆಲಸ ಮಾಡಿ ನಮಗೂ ವಯಸ್ಸಾಗಿತ್ತು, ಇವತ್ತು ಹೇಳ್ತಾವ್ ನೀವು ಹೋಗಿ ಅಂತ ಅಂದ್ರೆ ನಾವು.
If this is still going frame by frame, should anybody else try, or should I continue playing this?
I think it's better because it's quality performance is definitely down. You have shared the link. I think I would prefer people would watch it directly rather than a choppy film.
Okay, should I stop sharing now?
Yeah, I think that should be.
Bhargavi?
Yeah. We could probably, make it into a discussion. I guess our participants got a sense of what this film is about. It basically, walks the viewer through the complete landscape of waste management in Bangalore, but across, it's the same story across all cities. So while we generate so much of waste, much of the waste, which is in a mixed form, lands up in illegal and unscientific landfills. India does not have any scientific landfill, and this is a story of actually two landfills which are adjacent to each other, and where it was the local community who were bearing the brunt of this landfill. The first landfill started sometime in the late 90s. And they brought it to our attention sometime in early 2000s, 2002-03. And since then, they got help in terms of, we brought together the science, law, and many other things in helping addressing them with the problem. So we did a series of water analysis, we did a series of health camps for the local people, help them address the problem through the provisions of law, which was basically the Water Act. We took the simple provision in the Water Act. One of the sections says, if somebody is polluting my water, I have a right to write to the concerned agencies. And we help them use that one single provision to write a simple letter to the State Pollution Control Board. And that's when things start taking a shape in their entire struggle for getting justice. So when all the waste was landing in their village, their water was completely polluted. They could not use that water for drinking, cooking. They could not even do agriculture and animal rearing there. And many people started, initially it was just infectious diseases, but sooner there were other non-infectious diseases as well. Cancers, kidney failures, all of that started as well. And it's a long struggle where they approach the panchayat, they approach the cities and municipality, they take this, they take the issue to the State Pollution Control Board, and eventually one had to go to court. That is what you will see in the film. But this is a story of how scientific research combined with social science research helped that entire knowledge translate into some kind of action, which gives a lot of hope. So it will be good to have a discussion with Karishma and Vishwesh, because for them, like Karishma explained, Karishma is an architect, but they somehow managed to understand the complexity of this story. And it will be good if they share with us how they planned out the film, how did they decide who to capture, how did they decide where all they want to go and shoot beyond the landfill, and how long did it take, what were the challenges they faced in making a film like this. See, as researchers, it is definitely, in your case, you will probably land up giving your research proposal to your college or institutional IRC, and you will get a feedback and you'll be done with it, you will go. But for filmmakers to be able to shoot, they have to take so much permission from so many places. So it will be wonderful to talk to both of them and get a sense of what it was to make a film like this. And I'm sure we can open it to more for discussion from the participants. They'll have more questions. I will not explain the rest of the film because we want you all to watch it. Yeah. Yeah, Karishma and Vishwesh, it'll be great if you all can explain your journey making this film itself.
So as with all of our films and endeavors, I think all of our projects are collaborative. None of them are, we don't look at such films which we make for organizations as something that we do. We always work in collaboration at every stage, right from what we call the pre-production, which is the scripting and storyboarding phase, to the production, which is the actual shooting on ground, and the post-production, which is basically the editing and sound design, packaging, etc. So from start to delivery, that is our process. And without that, I don't think we're bringing the knowledge that exists out. Ours is a secondary step. First is, the primary research that's already done, we are basically interpreting and converting that into an audiovisual format, like I mentioned. So what became easy for us is that all of this research was already there. They were already also represented, or they were already converted into data that we were able to extract from. The reports that I just shared, now you have the toxic legacy report and the toxic legacy intensifies report, which were already, so all of this already existed, and basically the knowledge bearers were already there, the community members as well as ESG members. So our first step was to have a number of meetings. Our engagement with ESG did not even start with the Mavalipura film. We sort of streamlined into that eventually. We were looking at trying to create a glimpse of ESG's 25-year journey, which was also celebrated last year. So in that, what we felt that a 25-year journey can't simply be converted into a film overnight. There's a lot of work that goes into it. We wanted to know more, and we, instead of doing a width-wise thing, we wanted to really go into the depth of how things work. And so we decided to choose one aspect, which is this particular project. Because the people were still around, it was easier for us to access even the landfill, even though it's shut. You'll see in the film that all you see is mud, but actually we are trying to emphasize that under all of that mud, basically covered up, is all of the garbage which was dumped there for, over a decade. So the impact, that's a very good marker of how the entire project was. Everything was a cover up. So you kind of see, we're trying to find media articles online from a decade ago, and we're not able to find anything. So archival information and news and articles was not easy for us to access. So that became a dead end, and we were basically using all that the community members had kind of archived and they have very meticulously documented every single step of the way, including the protests and the active, uh, opposition that they raised in very legal ways as well, thanks to ESG's kind of support. So having said that, so that was the data bit, but the permissions bit, which we usually, any organization that we work with, it's kind of understood because we work with the beneficiaries of that organization and they do part of the communication. But here it wasn't like that. We were directly involved with speaking and communicating with the community members. So, and when it came to an issue, a civic issue like this, which of course eventually becomes a cover up. And even, I mean, this is just one instance. There are many, many landfills still existing, and it's very difficult to even access any of those if you go with the permission route. So we tried accessing even active landfills, but getting even, like a background entry, like a back entry into the landfills was very difficult. The community members tried a lot. Of course, BBMP, I mean, the local authorities, we couldn't even think of getting permission from. We attempted it, we went that direction, but we weren't able to get even an opinion or a meeting with the commissioner, a BBMP commissioner. So it's a sad state of affairs, and I think the film kind of represents that. It has a few perspectives. There's a lot that went on, but it is a glimpse. Our process was extracting, like I said, the data, converting that into a script. So we went step by step, and then what that converted into was production, which is the next step. And I think Vishwesh will talk more about the technicality of the production stage.
Yeah, so I think Karishma summed it up well, and it's good to be part of IMPRI's initiative for the Environment Day, and thank you, Bhargavi ma'am. Technically, I don't want to dwell too much, and because technical, it's too basic, as everybody knows today. But yeah, like the planning really kind of we have to be on toes on how do we plan our schedule based on everybody's availability. So basically, the production days was totally around 15 days, but spread across almost 2 years. Considering all the permissions, considering everybody's availability, it's always challenging, and also the kind of topic we need to be really patient enough to kind of get everybody's mindset in the same voice that we want to bring it out without tampering any the narrative what ESG or the community members locally wanted to voice out. So I think it was a very a great experience for us also. Definitely a lot of learning from the experience, hearing out the community members, working along with Bhargavi ma'am and Leo sir. Yeah, it was definitely a very great experience with the making of the film.
Thank you, Karishma and Vishwesh. So this film actually captures not just where waste is generated, but also the challenges of how today consumption related increase in waste is only adding to the problem. So they've gone at odd hours, stood outside places where all the app-based delivery services are packing and getting things ready. They've gone chasing behind dump trucks. They've captured the visuals of where people are dumping into the tipper auto. And there are many shots of drone shots of the landfill and also parts of Bangalore. So all this required very careful thinking, and again the story, if you kind of, after you watch it, you will definitely realize that there is not a single aspect of waste that is left out, because the challenges of not segregating the waste at source, but also the challenges of what the solid waste workers face, their challenges of having to deal without protective gear, then the fact that they have a whole lot of other challenges with respect to their payments, the benefits that they receive, the contractor-based models across all our cities. All of this also comes out in this film. And towards the end, it also narrates the current situation of what is happening in a city like Bangalore. And I can, since you all have already received a detailed lecture by Dr. Shamla Mani, you'll be able to relate with everything that she said in a visual manner in this film. Yeah, so maybe we could take some questions from the participants now.
Thank you both for the impactful screening and your thoughtful reflections. And the floor is now open for Q&A session. The fellows are requested to either use the hand feature or post their questions in the Q&A box or chat box.
Hi, ma'am. Neeti here.
Yeah, please go ahead.
I'm so honored to meet you, ma'am. Seeing your ESG report only, I have selected my PhD topic. I'm working on the landfills of Bengaluru only. And like 7 to 8 months, maybe more than a year, I have wasted going around BBMPs for the permission to visit all the landfills. But till date, I never got. For Mavlipura, the community people actually helped me to get into the site. I have taken samples during 2023 pre and post monsoon. And even after a decadal of the closure also, like normal studies where throughout the world, it is like after 20 years, the landfill gets stabilized. This is what they have shown in other papers. But in Mavlipura, my readings are showing that still it is active. See, after the landfill pollution index should come below 7 LPI. So it means that landfill is stabilized. During 2014-15, during the time of closure, it was around 26-30 and all. In my study, I found it is 13-14 in that range. That means still it will require many more years to stabilize. That is the one thing I found out. I have studied about the biodiversity over there. I have literally seen small calves drinking water from the highly polluted leachate. I have put those photos in my research paper also. And the calves were so thin, they look so diseased. I have spoken to the villagers over there. They have regular complaint that whatever they are planting, it is not growing well. The food is not getting, they are not getting the proper yield. Even the animals are regularly ill. They all have said. We have monitored nearby the forest areas and all, and we have found many like kingfisher and schedule 1, schedule 2 species of birds and all. So that means, well, if you find any schedule 1 species, that means that area has to be protected. So still, that is a lot more things has to be done in that area. We have to recover, or like some biomining activities and all has to be done. I have dug deep inside to check the soil quality also, and it was heavy metal contamination is there. Even the plant species I have collected, that also show the high contamination of heavy metals. It's almost 2023 I have done those analysis. Even after 10 years, we can really still the effect of the waste over there. So like I am a researcher, I can only do this part. Like further what to do even I don't know. I've just published the paper, I have informed to my guide and all, that's all in my limit.
Thank you so much, Samir. It will be great if you can even share the link of your published paper here.
Sure.
The case is still in court, and so if you have received from your research, the readings are so high in cattle and the
Cattle
soil
I
and
didn't. Water I have.
water, soil, and also in the plants out there. You can
Yeah,
imagine
yes.
the kind of toxicity that has got built up in humans and animals, right? Because they live there, so the bioaccumulation of many of these heavy metals will be definitely higher, and it will require further studies. I think your research will kind of set the stage for many more people. It will inspire many more people to undertake similar and deeper studies. So
And
thank
ma'am,
you so much.
as per the BBMP was asked to set up some water purification unit nearby outside, so that people will not depend on the groundwater and all. But both the visit I have found that the water purification unit was closed, it was not working.
Right, yeah. So in 2023 December, we did a consultation there with the local community, because now in the context of climate change, the local community will be facing even more harsh challenges, and they also shared the same thing that, although the court order had stipulated that they be provided with clean drinking water, the RO systems were not working, and these were dependent on the toxic polluted water itself.
Even I have the photos also that RO plant is locked, no water, no sign of water only there.
Right,
so that people have to depend. And I have photos where animals are grazing that ponds, only nearby ponds, the birds drinking water there. Even the people are taking water from there for agriculture, and that water is not fit for drinking. In my study, I have proved it in both pre and post monsoon.
Right. So in the film, you will also learn that, this falls in the zone 4 of the Arkavati catchment area. So technically, in catchment areas of rivers, you're not supposed to have these kind of landfills. So, if the earlier lecture did tell us that, while we do have laws in the country, what is happening? So this is another case of where decision making results in disastrous consequences both on biodiversity, water, and local life and livelihoods. Thank you, Neeti. I would love to have your paper, if you can share it here on the chat box, so that all our participants can benefit from it.
And ma'am, similar thing I have observed the Mitiganalli quarry.
Okay.
Similar thing. Another few years, it's going to same thing happen with what happened in Mavalipura. Similar thing going to happen in Mitiganalli.
Okay, it'll be great if you can share all your findings here. It'll be very helpful. Yeah.
Sure, ma'am.
Any other questions from the fellows?
And also, if you have any comments, and if you want to share something like Neeti, please do raise your hand and unmute and speak.
Ma'am, I want to ask one question.
Please go ahead.
Yeah. Hi, ma'am. Actually, I want to ask one question regarding what like your how, like, I talked to some people while working on my MSc dissertation in the Banaras. So there are like the few people who are working with the landfill, few are the people who are working with the dead bodies, disposing of. And in the river Ganga, they remove these dead bodies and other thing. And during that, after that, this Swachh Bharat Abhiyan and other thing started, and then the workers. So I asked these workers, so they told me, so we only knows from the past over the like from the generation how to clean, how to dispose of, how to take care of the environment. So these things they know, but now with the Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, some of the people they told, oh yeah, they are, our work is recognized. Like people are like actually saying, oh, the cleanliness is important. Someone in the big national front is saying this. So but they are disappointed if they get some sort of wages also for cleaning such things and doing such kind of work. So what kind of policies and what kind of if some diseases are there, any subsidies for their medical health or something, or any medical. So one person told me if government give us like in the company some insurance are there for the medical claim, so we are in the front thing. So no one is thinking about if we get the insurance for some diseases like cancer and other thing. So what your stance on this thing?
See, unfortunately, this the labor rights of people who are cleaning our city, the solid waste workers, rag pickers, and all of them, it's largely looked as the informal sector, right? So even in a city like Bangalore, there is a very small percentage of the solid waste workers who come directly under the city. Otherwise, most of it is based on contractor-based outsourcing of this labor. And the city municipality doesn't even have to deal with these workers on a day-to-day basis. It's the contractors, and the contractors don't pay them properly. They don't give them protective gear. They don't come with any benefits. They don't have sick leave benefits. They don't have compensation for health care, or even when there is death and injury while working. It's a huge challenge. So non-profit organizations and other community-based organizations across the country have been working for the rights of this community, and it was after so many struggles. If you see this film, you will understand those challenges. It was only recently, maybe 2 weeks back, that some of the solid waste workers in the city of Bangalore even got their appointment letter. Okay. So on one hand, you have highly formalized sectors where they enjoy all kinds of benefits, from tax holidays to interest-free loans to buy their second car and third house and so on and so forth. We also have, communities working in sectors who don't come under the basic rules and regulations of what the legal provisions of labor provide. So that's a big struggle that again speaks about the inequality we live in, and a lot more conversation, a lot more dialogue, a lot more writing has to happen in this sector to ensure that they at least get their basic salary, basic provisions and benefits from the kind of labor that they are helping for the city.
Ma'am, one more follow-up question. Like we in the newspaper or every time the Indore is the cleanest city and winning the award and everything. So, but the cleanness, waste segregation, this thing we heard in the newspaper, this city is doing. But what their worker, are they happy with this cleanliness model? Are they getting the enough pay? No one is I didn't hear any article on the Indore city what's their worker and other people are saying. So can we is it like with this can we get this as an example? Oh, there some model is with the BBMP is working and people and workers are also happy. What's that model is and other thing?
There are very few good examples, Sarika, from across the country, very few good examples. But largely this is a sector that is facing a lot of challenge. And like in the first few frames of the film, you would have heard the woman speaking say that we are Dalits, and that says a lot, right? So at the end of the day, who are those people who are cleaning the city? Those who are at the, if you look at the intersection of caste, class, religion, language, all of that, it is those who are, you know, the minorities in religion, then caste minorities who are who don't have good education, who don't speak the dominant language. It is largely that, and obviously the very few main media even pick up these stories. Most of our smart cities in Indore, also part of Indore city came under the smart city project. While we made so many parts of our cities so-called smart cities with hundreds of crores of rupees spent on that, the cities today tend to be clean because it is coming at a huge cost, and the brunt of it is being paid by the solid waste workers who still struggle for their salary, who still work in horrible conditions, who still don't get all benefits. That is the story across the city. Very few good examples. If you search, I'm sure you will find.
Thank you, ma'am.
I mean, Karishma and Vishwesh, please feel free to jump in.
I actually do want to add a point.
Please, yes.
I feel like, and this might be my, 2 cents to this whole thing, but whatever goes around comes around is a big lesson that we learned through the filmmaking process, because whatever has happened at Mavalipura in indirect ways and direct ways reach us all in the city, even though we're this far away. The vegetables and the produce that was grown and sent across to the city is, part of it comes from Mavalipura to us. In fact, I can share an anecdote. When we were there, Ramesh and Srinivas were taking us around, and they took us to this other patch where, they got us some coconut water and all of that, tender coconut. And while we were sitting there, they showed us a goni chila with capsicum in it. And they said, take some home. And we said, no, that's okay. And then half an hour into the conversation, they also immediately revealed that they don't eat their own capsicums that are grown in their own land or their fields. So then they revealed that, yeah, all of this comes back to the city. So in a way, whatever Bangalore has dumped on us goes back to them. And also, in a way, we do this to ourselves because now the land there, I mean, one thing I'd like to say is that the empowerment that these community members got from ESG has continued. It was only a start point, but they continue to fight for a lot of human rights. Land rights is one of the most recent things that they've been fighting for, because the Shivram current layout has been eating up, and in a very everything is in violation of their human rights. But that is also something that we got involved in, and suddenly we're not journalists, but we were almost taking all of their videos, editing them out and sending it back to them so that they could go to court with these videos and show people how their land was being, I mean, their farmlands were being destroyed overnight. Tractors were there. And so, I mean, yeah, what Bhargavi was mentioning earlier about the receivers of these kind of, illegal activities are first, as we all know, right? Like people who are impoverished already, who come from disadvantaged sort of backgrounds. And this is something we continue to see. And in the film also, you'll see a part where we've captured their ongoing protests, actually. And they use extremely innovative, I mean, they're not just walking around on the streets, they're actually using traditional methods to protest. And there's a lot of richness in the way they try to communicate with their activism. So you'll see parts of all of this in the film. So hope you all get to see and, maybe at some point give us feedback also.
Yeah, I just like to add few things on that note. So primarily for us as filmmakers, we always think that, we are presenting a right voice and a right narrative. And it also becomes very important to be opinionated perspective and give a biased perspective. We need to always, it's a very responsible medium for us to just exactly portray what we want to. And in the film, we very much try to get the interviews of the government authorities itself, like the BBMP commissioner or the president of the authority. But nobody was willing to, because that is where, as filmmakers, we always feel that the narrative suddenly becomes one-sided. We always want to kind of be in a balanced environment. But yes, definitely the truth is seen. We don't have to explain a lot, and the first-hand experience of just spending time with the community members, it's very disturbing as well, but at the same time it's very inspiring to see that they stood for their own rights. Being having the privilege as city dwellers, urban dwellers, we raise our voices only when the dumb garbage is not picked up from our houses. We only raise our opinions and raise our concerns over time, but we never go to the end point of it and even question that, okay, where is my garbage going to? Yes, a lot of people are adapting, trying to practice garbage recycling at homes. Many people are, but still, I think the majority of the city population does not worry, does not think. I think it also comes from that privileged thought. So it's very rare to even a smallest gesture of interacting with the Paura Karmikas on a day-to-day basis. A lot of people even don't even care to give a bottle of water during summer to them. These are the basic things, because the environment, just as Karishma mentioned, it's going to give back to us in some other way. But yeah, I think there's a lot to learn as people, as the community. We need to be more vocal about the end result as well, rather than just keep complaining about it. The garbage is not picked from our area, the roads are not fixed. Like, there's a lot of things that we always want solutions, but we don't want to be part of that solution. So I think that's a biggest step that we as citizens need to be part of that movement in any possible way.
Thank you, Vishwesh, for bringing in that very important concept. This afternoon, I was at another screening, and there somebody was sharing that we have lost our basic humanness, where we don't even acknowledge our waste pickers when they come and take that bag from us. And that lady was saying that I just say thank you to that person, because I don't know what else to say. At the end of the day, she comes door to door, and she rings the bell and she takes it. And I'm so grateful to her. All that I can say is thank you. And she's happy, and she leaves my house with a smile. That's the least I can do, which is so important. And you shared the fact that people don't even give water, which is so true. Even in big cities like Bangalore, where caste plays such an important role, and even if people are giving a glass of water, they would not give the regular glass. They would give it in broken bottles or broken mugs and things like that, which they will not reuse. So thank you for bringing in that point and highlighting that aspect of waste picking. So who is picking our waste? Why is it a particular community that is picking the waste? And why are they not paid properly? These are questions that need to be addressed a lot more than, at the end of the day, waste management is a basic, simple science. And a city like Bangalore has messed it up with all its science and technology that we are very boastful of. We have not got our waste right. We've not got our water systems right. We've not got our mobility right. And we've not got our basic local governance in place. Yesterday's tragedy has, said more than what it should about how the city is functioning. So in that context, thanks to Karishma for sharing all the links here. way back in 2002, when we were working on this issue, we made that film called Nagara Nairmalya, which talks about the cleanliness of the city. And that film speaks about requesting people to just segregate the waste. And the film is made in such a way that the knowledge comes from the solid waste worker, the Paurakar. Instead of, knowledge is always something that we think comes from universities, comes from academicians, comes from people who have a line of degrees, right? No, knowledge can come from anyone, anywhere, and in any language. And that is something that we need to value. So that film showcases how a Paurakarmika goes around educating people in her community about segregating waste. That was made in 2002 and nothing was done about it in the city. We've learned again about the laws and all that, so I won't go into it right now because we had a whole lot of speakers who've spoken about that. Nothing was done. Then we made another film called Namura Chandaduru, which is also in the link. That was made in 2004. That was made for a rural audience where it speaks from a theatrical perspective. Yet nothing happened. And in 2012, like almost 10 years later, the city municipality put the Nagara Nairmalya film on their website, hoping that people would segregate after a few court orders started coming. But what is very important is, again, as researchers, if your documentation, if your research is very systematic, it will definitely bring about change. And these two reports, the Bangalore Toxic Legacy and the other one, the Toxic Legacy Intensifies, that's a systematic way of research and documentation, which really pushed the needles in the court, and eventually the landfill was shut down. And along with it came very good orders. So basically the court said waste should be segregated at source. It said no to landfilling. It said no to incineration. Then it pushed the city to go weigh its waste in all the wards, because waste management is something that can be dealt at the wards. Then it pushed the city to set up the ward committees. After the ward committees were set up, it ensured that meetings would be held. It ensured that the minutes of the meetings would be put up on the website. It did so much. The case is still being heard because the last part, that is, the local community still needs to get justice in the context of compensation, the biomining, and all of that stuff. But the way the court looked at this problem was with clinical precision. And that was possible because of all the scientific reporting that was submitted to the courts at various points of time. So as researchers, I think it's very intense, both the reports. So just browse through it. You might find it a little heavy, but browse through it so you will get an idea of what kind of research goes into it. So thanks to Neeti for putting in her research. And there is one question from Sarika. Did you already ask that? Why is awareness alone not enough, and what additional measures can be taken to effectively address this issue? I think if people are truly aware, they will definitely wake up to it, Sarika. Like Karishma mentioned, the minute you know that the capsicums or the cauliflowers you're getting in from your market is contaminated with the waste generated by you would obviously take care. And in addition to just reading, I believe in experiential learning. I think people should go while we are all the time looking for recreation, at times it's also good to go on experiential learning trips to places to see what is happening, listen to people, hear voices from the ground, from the field. That will help a lot in arriving at decisions which will help you make decisions in your own life. And with this year's theme, Beat Plastic Pollution, it will be a film like this, and experiential visits, like I said, will become one constant reminder that will help you make those much needed change in your life. Any more questions? So if we don't have any more questions, maybe I'll close with some closing comments and I'll hand it over to Ria. So I think it was a great day as our special session on Environment Day with Dr. Ravi Chellam sharing his thoughts on the conservation models and what really needs to be done. And this film, The Waste and the City, I would urge all of you all to watch it while you all have dinner. It's just half an hour, little less than half an hour. And the film, it just doesn't show the scale of the problem. It tells you the story of people, which is something very important, the story of people, communities, and the systems that are entangled in the flow of this urban waste, and the urgent need to rethink, reimagine our relationship with consumption, the way we dispose, and our personal responsibilities. So with that, I think we were fortunate enough to have such wonderful speakers today, Dr. Chellam and Vishwesh and Karishma for making time for us. And we will definitely be in conversation as we move forward the next few weeks before your program gets over. So it'll be good to hear about what you think about the film. You can share your thoughts on the WhatsApp group or through email. And we will be happy to share Karishma and Vishwesh's email. You can write to them also. You can hold special screenings in your own institutions and elsewhere so that this story reaches far and wide, because this is a story, like I said, not just of Bangalore, but of all other cities. And it will also help share why these stories matter, and particularly now in the context of climate change. So do take that opportunity to do this. And so with all these conversations, and which are truly grounded in lived realities, I think it makes the World Environment Day very, very symbolic, and truly will push us all into being a little in the transformative mode. So with that thought, I think our environment is not just out there in forests, rivers, oceans, and our cities, but it's also about our waste, our air, our streets, and all those who help us keep our cities running, and those whose lives are constantly under threat while they work on this. So let's work together, watch the film again, and thanks to one and all for making it today. Thank you. Over to you, Ria.
Thank you, Bhargavi ma'am, for your remarks. And I'd now like to thank Karishma ma'am and Vishwesh sir for such an engaging and interactive conversation. And your work brings important environmental themes to the forefront. And it has been a privilege to learn from your vision and creativity. Thank you. With this, I'll move on to the formal vote of thanks. As we come to the end of day 9th of Environment Policy and Action Youth Fellowship Cohort 2.0 and the special session on World Environment Day, I, Ria Rawat, researcher at IMPRI Impact and Policy Research Institute, would like to propose formal vote of thanks on behalf of IMPRI, New Delhi. We sincerely thank our distinguished speakers for today's session, Dr. Ravi Chellamji, Ms. Karishma Raoji, and Mr. Vishwesh S. Prasadji for enriching this World Environment Day observance with their knowledge, creativity, and experiences. We thank all our participants who have raised pertinent questions and actively participated in today's deliberation. We look forward to welcoming you again on Friday, June 13, 2025 for our upcoming session under EPAYF. We are grateful if you are watching us later on YouTube or listening to our various podcasts or reading our publications. We hope you continue to join in future to our IMPRI Web Policy Talk and Web Policy Learning. Wishing you a very good day. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Good night.